Hello, this is Tamara, and I am here today with a mallow plant, a common mallow. I wanted to talk to you a bit about this common mallow, which is thriving here on this early October day. The mallow is a very common, pretty easily identified plant in our region. It is a weed and it is a delicious, nutritious, and healing weed. So I wanted to share some information about it. So here it is. Here we can notice the shape of the leaf. It's kind of like a shell shape, goes around in a circle, and a little bit serrated edges, but pretty soft, pretty rounded. And up close we can see, here are the flowers, little whitish, pinkish flowers, and some hairs on the stalk of and even the stems of the leaves. So the stalk of the plant and the stems of the leaves have little soft hairs. Here there's a little bit of it looks a little darker just because it's a bit of soil kicked up because we just had a rain. So they usually just look clean, transparent hairs on the stems, and the leaves are quite soft. They're really, they're pretty like nice, a little bit velvety to touch. So these leaves and these flowers all grow from these stems that come right out of the ground from the roots, and it's just a kind of a long taproot. Occasionally the root might have a couple little rhizomes, but the root it spreads. It kind of like it moves out sideways. And so it's a bit of a creeping plant. It like sort of creeps along the ground. It doesn't really grow that tall. But you'll have it like where I have it here, it's on the patio stones. It's like just coming up through the cracks, and I'm letting it stay because I welcome it. But occasionally you'll definitely run into situations where you're going to need to pull it out because it's growing not where you want it. If you don't need to pull it out, you can just harvest these leaves from when they start coming up in about like late June and all throughout the season until a hard frost. You'll get mallow, and you can eat them. They're they're pretty tasty just on their own. You can just, whoops, eat a leaf. And if you do, you'll notice that the flavor's pretty mild, and it's kind of, it's got a pretty soft, sort of slippery a little bit, like a mucilaginous texture once you chew it, even though it's got the little hairs on the leaves, which you feel, which give it a bit of texture. It's pretty mucilaginous. And those leaves can be added to salads. They can just be eaten just like I ate them. You can also take these flowers and add them to salads, and the flower buds. And once the flowers are finished, they make these little, what we call cheeses, which are the like seed heads once the flowers are done. And they kind of look like little wheels of cheese. So that's why we give it that name. Can't really get a good view of it here. The cheeses. So like little green flat things that look like wheels of brie cheese, sort of. This one's not quite flattened yet. So these are edible too. And the mallow is also really nice cooked. So you can take this and, you know, add it to your whatever as a cooked green, to your stir fries and such. And you can also, this one's kind of dirty from the rain, so let me see if I can find, from the dirt got kicked up from the rain. Here we go. So you can also take these leaves and add them to like your pestos or your smoothies. And I really like this one for blending into green blended stuff like pestos or smoothies, because the mucilage, that slippery texture that you get from them, will help to thicken smoothies, sauces, and pestos. So like, yeah, for a pesto, if you have basil in your garden, but then you want to add an additional green and you don't have very much basil and you want to sort of fill it out, this is a really good one. It's particularly good. And I make pesto with basil and mallow, and then I freeze it to use over the winter, because you're getting a lot of the nutrients from the mallow, taking up lots of trace minerals. You know, all the chlorophyll and all the good wild green goodness that you get from it. And then you can preserve that for over the winter and make it really tasty when blended with something like basil. On its own, it's a very mild flavor. It's just a mild tasting green. Now, the other thing that you can do culinarily with mallow is you can use the leaves and also the roots. If you dig up the roots, they're these like white, sort of thin roots. Just like their cousin, the cultivated marshmallow, you can make marshmallow with them. So there's actually a plant called marshmallow, and that's where the original marshmallows came from that plant, because that plant has roots and leaves that are slippery, mucilaginous. They have these carbohydrates that when they get mashed up, they turn very slippery, and they're sugars. So they have a little bit of sweetness, and when they get cooked into a syrup mixed with sugar and cooked down and cooked down and cooked down, they actually can get the same texture as marshmallow, that sticky, gooey, chewy kind of texture. And so if you're so inclined, you could try to work with this plant in this way and work with the roots. The roots are really quite mucilaginous, but also the leaves, and you would cook them down into a syrup and then keep cooking it down further until you got the consistency that you wanted. And it might not be quite as sort of elasticy as the texture as you would get from the marshmallows that we buy. You might need to add something kind of like cornstarch or something like that to it in order to give it that sort of texture, but it will become pretty sticky and like gooey and sweet and pretty tasty and fun, made from a wild plant. So that's a cool thing to know about it. But in terms of a useful food, really nutritious green that lasts late into the season, and the flowers, will just bring some delight to your salads. And then the plant, because it has these mucilaginous properties, these really slippery kind of carbohydrates in them, it is actually a very, very soothing plant for all the mucous membranes in the body, and can be really helpful in sore throats, to soothe the sore throats, for coughs, to soothe like irritated lungs, in the gut for like irritated membranes, like inflammatory bowel stuff, or sometimes even like for constipation, because the that mucilage, it softens everything and it kind of coats the membranes, and it allows for smoother passage of stuff along the membranes. And so it can help to clear out wastes, and it can help to soothe irritated tissues. And in the process of doing that, it can really help to reduce inflammation. So we can infuse these leaves and flowers into oil and make a topical preparation that could be like either just the oil itself, or you could turn it into a salve, and that's really great for irritated skin that's especially feeling hot and inflamed and irritated from scratching or from an injury like a cut or a scrape. It'll really help to soothe and heal the skin. And then internally, we can make also a syrup out of mallow that could be like a cough syrup it'll help to bring expectoration. It'll bring on a cough, but in a very soothing way. So if you have a cough where it's really irritated every time you cough and it's really inflamed all along those like respiratory membranes along your lungs and your throat and everything, the mallow in a cough syrup will help to soothe that while it ensures that you bring up that cough that you need to bring up. So it's really, really a helpful herb, and it's super abundant. Like, I think a lot of you are recognizing this by seeing this. If you are in Ontario, where I am, or anywhere in sort of northeastern North America, and probably a lot of other parts of North America, certainly you are going to recognize the common mallow if you spend some time outside. And here it's growing out of the pavement, like it's growing out of the patio stones. It's like it's soothing this ground that's irritated by pavement. It's trying to help soothe it. It will do the same thing in the tissues of our body. It's a wonderful healer for the earth and for us, and it's also a very abundant, nutritious food. So I encourage you to check it out. Common mallow. It's called Malva neglecta. That's its scientific name, Malva neglecta. The Malva genus is a lot of the mallows that have these sort of slippery, mucilaginous kind of constituents. Yeah, neglecta. It pretty much grows on neglected land. So there's my nasturtiums, which are not neglected. And, you know, the mallow is not neglected here either because I love it, but it does just show up on its own, and then I just let it stay. So check it out, common mallow, Tamara and Mallow, over and out.